So now we have yet another large deployment that we're going to share with you. It's really interesting because when I first started working with FIDO like 8 years ago, we had like a list of like 6 deployments. And now we have an entire agenda full of deployments, and it's just a wonderful thing. So please join me in welcoming Dereck Henson, who is a security architect at USAA, who's going to talk about how USAA is working on strategies for better MFA adoption.
Thank you. So, strategies for better MFA adoption in your enterprise. It's a sufficiently boring and corporate title for everything. I think we started off with something along the lines of try the trident, a 3-pronged approach for moving things forward. Another working title we had that the committee didn't like very much was something along the lines of people proselytizing for protecting the passwordless society or something along those lines. But anyway, so strategies for MFA adoption is kind of where we landed, but anyway, your mileage may vary there. So I'm Dereck Henson. I've been working for USAA about 16-ish years. I work with our member identity and access management technology, platform strategy, those kinds of things. I'm going to say member a whole lot. When I say member, read customer, right? So USAA is a financial services company and insurance company. That's going to become important later on because we're serving multiple masters, so to speak, right? I've got all the regulations of the financial services industry, and we have all the things in the property and casualty and P&C and insurance stuff as well, where our members, our customers, our users are sometimes looking for different experiences based on which part of the company or both parts of the company they're interacting with. So that's going to be kind of a theme running through everything here. So, 3-part strategy for MFA. Now this is going to be a little more kind of wishy-washy, a little more on the strategy-based things and stuff you've seen in the past. The 3 big things we're going to be shooting for is a default on strong, basically starting with things to be strong right off the bat, authenticator of choice, and an authentication ecosystem. And we're going to have a few bullet points in each one of these things. If there's a prevalent question for everything else, raise your hand, we'll get a microphone to you. If not, if you can save it to the end, that would be much preferred in the grand scheme of things. So default on strong. We found that it's a whole lot easier to start someone in an MFA highly secured program rather than to convince them to change their mind later. So if they start off on first enrollment, you get their phone numbers, you get them enrolled in all the authenticators you need them to be into. They are going to use that from day one and not see any difference. So what we're seeing is our new enrollments, our new members, the newer generation, high adoption. Using MFA, it's not a big deal. They're totally okay with it. The problem areas we're running into are folks that we've had for a very long time, very long memberships, right? The folks that, I've done this for 20 years, I've done this for 30 years, why are you making me do something different now? And the classic response is, hey, thank you for your service, thank you for your membership. We are very concerned about the safety and security of your accounts with us. Let's go ahead and help us protect you, right? Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't. What I'm finding, what I'm learning, especially in these kinds of talks, is that in this room, we are all very security-minded. Your customers, that may not be the case, right? Their job, when they come into USAA, their goal is not to authenticate. Their goal is not to log in. Their goal is to do their business and go about their day. So anything I do in the middle of all that keeps them from doing their business, they're not too happy with. So we're going to talk about some different strategies and stuff in there to help with that. So start them off safe, avoid that experience shock. Like I said, the newer generation, they've got phones in their pocket, they've got all these other kinds of things. It's not difficult to get them signed up, but trying to get the later generations, folks that have had more established relationships with your companies, those are going to be your probably more problem children, so to speak. So you've got to have a have. So you look at the NISTs, everything basically comes off the have authenticators. If you don't have that, you don't have any sort of security. It's definitely the most critical type out of everything. Your mobile places, this is where it's really going to shine, right? You've got 1,000 different authenticators on this little, pocket computer for things, right? So if you've got it, leverage it. We're going to talk a little more later on about YAMs and how that's maybe not the best idea for everything, but if they've got it, use it. If they've got a have that's even not necessarily a very good one, use it. It's better than just a password. It's better than just the PII. We all know that stuff's already out there. Give me something at least now to start stair-stepping them into a more secure solution so that you can give them more authenticators later on if you need to. Does this make sense? Does this track so far? So default them on. Go ahead and have a have to start with. You're going to have to drive enrollments for your existing communities. So the new folks, we're starting off with MFA. That's great. We've got some strategies we're going to talk about to automatically enroll some folks. But we need to give everyone that's already in there is a single-factor authentication, multi-factor options. So if someone comes in and they're signed up for just the single-factor options, they can go through and get in with a password, get in with a security question. These are awful, but go ahead. If you see on their accounts, if you see with their demographic, they have all the things they need to authenticate with a multi-factor, try it. So one of the biggest benefits that we had is that we made a switch in our authentication systems, is that even though they're only enrolled in a single factor, we gave them the option to try to multi-factor in our experience. We went through and we found that when they were successfully multi-factoring, we changed their account and said, hey, from this point forward, this is going to be the expectation. And for the most part, everybody liked it. They go through and say, wow, USAA, you've upgraded your security so much. Don't mind the fact that this is something that we've had for multiple years. We put it in front of the users. We just defaulted to it, gave them an option to use it. Once they used it, we enrolled it to them moving forward. You want to give your users choice on which authenticator to use. You don't want to present the choice of whether or not to use authenticators at all. Does that make sense? So default on strong, make sure that you enroll everyone there. If they use MFA, give them options for that. Go ahead and set them up to where on the subsequent logins, that is the default mode for being secure. So authenticators of choice. We were talking to a lot of vendors several years back. The idea is that when you would go in and you would sign up for a particular company or you would sign up for a particular product, you would go through and say, okay, if you're MFA, this is your option. If you're SFA, this is your option. Maybe there's one or two different flavors for it, but if you are signed up for something, these are the rails you're on. This is the way you authenticate. This is the way you interact with the particular company. We found that it's really good to give your users choices for it. Now, some of your users are only going to have one choice. Okay, that's better than nothing. But if you can, give your users a channel of choice and an authenticator of choice to do their business. So we've got multiple channels coming at USA, right? I can have folks that come in on the web channel. I can have folks come in on the mobile channel, individuals talking with service reps. I want to use the powers and the things that are intrinsic to each of those channels. Mobile, this is obvious. FIDO Authenticator, any sort of token or anything behind the scenes, easy peasy. User biometrics there, easy peasy. If I'm on a phone channel, right, any potential past voice biometrics are good options. If you have a way to verify the call that's coming in, use that. If you're on web authen's an option, right? Push notifications are options, right? Look at the channels that you have. Look at what the intrinsic qualities of those channels are going to be and leverage something that makes sense within that channel. That way, they can have a streamlined experience in any way your users want to interact with you. If you're only a web-based company, focus on that. If you have a web-based company and a mobile app, leverage those, right? You want to prioritize authenticators that you're going to offer to be ones that are going to work across all of your channels. So for instance, if I'm doing a thumbprint biometric here and unlocking a token behind the scenes, yeah, that's going to work great on mobile, right? With passkeys, things of this nature, that's going to work for web. If I'm calling in the phone channel, that's not really an option, right? Biometrics, push authentication, things of this nature, these are things that I can run across all my different channels. Does this make sense, we're going through? So if you're going to look and say, what's the next thing I'm going to offer my membership? Next thing I'm going to offer my customers, prioritize something that's going to work on all the different interaction modes that they have available to you. So along these lines is don't pass off on passive. So USA's quick logon experience is a big part of that. So When I say passive, I both mean passively enrolling your individuals into a multi-factor experience, as well as having a passive option of an authenticator. So we were looking at the keynote, and they were saying, basically you challenge first, you collect information, then you verify, right? Well, some of those steps can happen without the user being aware of them, right? I can go through, I can look at the phone they're coming in on, I can sit down with one of the mobile network operators, and I can verify that, yeah, this is Dereck, and he is on this phone plan, and he is coming in. I can do that behind the scenes without my membership, without my user base having to know about that. Leverage those kinds of authenticators whenever possible. Now, most of those very specific solutions are only going to work in a particular channel. That's okay. Most folks only use one modality or two in the grand scheme of things, but focus on the things that can happen automatically, because that's going to give you security and a better experience. There's a bit of a caveat to this. We ran this into with Quick Logon, basically our FIDO-like authenticator that we had on the mobile device, where we enhanced it and made it more secure. So it is a true multi-factor experience behind the scenes. And members were calling in going, I've been with USAA for 30 years and I cannot believe you are going to allow me to log in with just my fingerprint or just my PIN. How insecure are you guys? And I'm like, well, we have tokens behind the scenes. I've got multiple tokens. I've got certificates. I'm doing all this really cool security stuff behind the scenes, guys. It's really secure. It's really good. But they didn't see it. We made it too passive. So you don't want to pass on passive. You want to have those there so your membership can use it. But sometimes, like the example of the Quick Logon, we put an interstitial in the place and slowed it down and said, hey, by the way, we're processing all this cool security stuff for you. And people loved it. It was slower, but they loved it. So not only do you have to be secure, you have to actually look secure too. And I get it, we're all wearing our tinfoil hats in here and all that. Appearances don't matter. It's whether it's secure or not. No, it really does. Especially when you're looking at your customer-facing elements, right? A lot of times, your authentication is the first touch of your company to your clients. You want that to be a good experience all around. So YAMS again. So YAMS is yet another mobile solution. So your companies that are out there have a mobile solution. The new signups, almost everybody is going to have this pocket computer with all the keys, all the half factors, everything you could ever want from a security standpoint on this. That's awesome. You want to give them choices of authenticators, right? I can use the tokens behind the scenes, I can use push authentications, I can use the biometrics, that's great. But when you're looking at your strategy and you're looking at how to increase MFA adoption, if you already have a fingerprint scanner and you already have Face ID working for you, do you really need an iris scanner on top of that? A big portion of what I've been doing lately is going through all the grand innovative ideas for 600,000 different modalities for, hey, let's authenticate more with mobile. Like, guys, that's great. That's cool. It's like, the tech on it is really hot. And it's not going to drive my adoption at all. If I've got a good experience here, that it's a single touch of a fingerprint and they are fully authenticated coming in to do whatever they want to in my company, giving them different options to do a single fingerprint is not moving the needle for me. It's not helping my adoption. Now, that doesn't mean you throw those away and you never go back and look at those. I'm saying don't prioritize something shiny on mobile just because it's on mobile. Keep in mind what value that authenticator is bringing to your customer base, is bringing to your organization as far as securing their accounts and making sure they have a better experience coming in. Savvy on there? So yeah, mobile definitely shines on this, but you can definitely have too many options on it. So the authentication ecosystem, the big part I want to talk about on this is we talk a lot about authentication, verification, authentication. And that's really great for making sure that that digital identity can get access to a particular account or not. It doesn't always do the best job of making sure that an actual carbon unit human is associated with that identity. And when we think about the ecosystem, you want to think about, how did I establish that to begin with? How did I tie all those little pieces together, right? Did I just take someone off the street and throw them an account and say, okay, you're enrolled, you're good to go? Did I do some sort of know your customer stuff coming in? Did I do some sort of proofing of that identity before I came in? Now, what gets interesting on the ecosystem is having authentication is great. That's awesome. That's useful. But how you do your enrollment matters, right? How you're signing people up for both your company and the authenticators you're working with absolutely matters. So if they can come in off the street and need absolutely nothing to establish identity, then what you're authenticating doesn't have as much weight as you want it to. So coming to the picture in here. So authentication is in the bottom right-hand corner. We spent a lot of time thinking about that, a lot of time talking through that and saying, okay, these are all the different modalities we can have. These are all the different authenticators that are available. We don't talk a whole lot about recovery. Generally speaking, in most companies, when you have a good authentication and you want to unlock an account or you want to recover a credential, you go through a recovery flow, which is basically shorthand for easier security to get into my company, right? So if you think about, to establish authentication, I just have a little pointer here. How does this work? Yes, not. All right, that doesn't work. That's okay. So if you're looking at what you need to establish credentials in a company, you need to look at what your enrollment and proofing are going to be coming in. So one of the adages that we're working for and we're striving toward at USAA is, if I'm going to be recovering credentials, if I'm going to be recovering an account, I'm going to hold it to the same standards that was needed to establish those credentials and accounts to begin with. The idea of having a recovery that is an easy mode security to come in, that's what your bad guys are going to move to. So as soon as you finish up authentication, the bad guys move to recovery. As soon as you shore that up, they're going to move off to your proofing side of things, right? Any part of this circle, any weak link in the chain there is where you're going to be pushing the next attack vector, the next place that people are going to be going for. So a recovery that can look at the information that's being provided, do passive proofing on the back end, reestablish the chain of carbon identity to digital identity to having possession of the authenticators is really the way to go. It's really the way you want to be looking at how to establish your ecosystem, establish the life cycle of your digital identities in here. Any questions on this part of it? So, good stuff. So on the summary side of it, the three big pieces are: start off strong. When the first touches come in for folks coming into your company, when they enroll, have them start safe. Have them enroll in a multi-factor authentication. Don't even give it an option. Say, hey, look, you're coming in. This is what you do. This is how our interaction is going to go. What that's going to do is it's going to keep you from having to worry about that culture shock or that shock of changing the authentication on them later on, right? Upgrading them later on. Oh, we've upgraded you by making it harder to log in. They hate that. No one likes that, right? Started off with that experience, the anchoring effect, started off there strong. Have, in most cases, it's going to be your mobile devices. We leverage very heavily SMS. It's not the best, but it's better than just the PII and stuff we've been working on, we're using at the moment. Always looking for more options there. Drive enrollments for the folks that you didn't get right off the bat. Do what you can to get them enrolled. And if you can enroll them passively in the way that seems like you're making their account more secure, even better, right? Sending things out and stopping what they're doing and saying, okay, I need you to sign up for 16 more credentials. Yes, that will work, but you're keeping your users from doing what they're trying to do. So keep in mind, we care about their authentication. We care about their security. They care mostly about coming in and doing the business they want to do. They care about going in, seeing their accounts, doing that transfer, right? The security stuff's friction in the way that they don't want to worry about. Provide them with authenticators of choice. Give them as many options as you can, secure options that you can, and look at what different channels are going to mean for what authenticators are going to be available. Mobile, a lot of options. your .com and your web flows, web authenticators, push notifications, classic OTCs, whatever you need to there. Phone channels, if you can get them authenticated in a channel there, even better. Because as soon as they start talking to a real human being, that's going to slow things down, that's going to impact handle times, that's going to impact your bottom line for things, and that also gives the bad guys a whole lot more ends to start working on your service reps, those kinds of things. So the more authentication you can do up front there, the better off. So have passive solutions. Each one of those channels have passive options, things that can basically happen magically behind the scenes, that they don't have to be perceived. And don't just pile on the mobile solutions, right? Have a mobile solution, have a good one, and then focus elsewhere. If you're only a mobile company, by all means, yams all day long, because that's your business. But if you've got multiple channels, multiple options for choice, look at your weak links, see what's going on there. Make sure that everything's got some sort of option across the board. Because if you have users that are enrolled in MFA options, but it only works online, all you have to do is call on the phone to get past everything, you really haven't done anything. And lastly, we're looking at the authentication ecosystem. Look at how you're going to be recovering your credentials and use a higher bar for that. Think about what it takes to establish credentials in your ecosystem, what it takes to establish authenticators, and think about recovering that as a same kind of bar. Because if recovery is lower than your authentication, that's where the bad guys are going to attack. You've got to bring everything up to be equal across the board, because otherwise you're just pushing it around, right? You're pushing the bad guys around where they're going to go. So thank you, slides. The next slide, but I was going to keep this up. Are there any questions in the audience for things? I know we have a couple more minutes left. Qualms, quips, quotations?
Can I get through that way?
This light's really intense, so it's hard to see everyone.
Here I come.
Hi. So you had said when MFA is used, make it the default.
Right.
Do you do anything to remove passwords, or do you still allow that as an option?
So we're still allowing passwords as an option. When we've set up our systems, I've got a lot of systems in place to pull the password out to where it's no longer an option that's going to be in there. Given where we're currently at, I've got a smaller number of individuals that could go completely passwordless. So it's in the plan, it's in the strategy to do it, but we're going to have to look at additional adoption of those authenticators of choice to be able to do that. Better adoption in our membership of things like the FIDO authenticators, right, to make that happen. It's there, we want it to be there, and fortunately or unfortunately, we have to do what we can to make sure that we're still servicing as many of our members as possible while doing the security part of it as well. But yeah, so password's still an option, but we're looking to kill that off. Now, on the mobile side, we actually run into the problem that if they lose their mobile device sometimes, and they still have a password on file, many of our individuals, many of our members don't know their password anymore because they never use it, because they are so used to these streamlined, good experiences on the different channels that we're offering them, the passive authenticators that we're using. So it's actually been interesting that they still have a password on file, but a lot of folks have never even used it. So we're taking good strides in that direction, but there's still more we can do.
So just one last question, which is really more about USAA in terms of authenticator choice. Can you share where your customers are weighted in terms of the channels that they use, and then how that leads to what authenticators you provide them for that choice? Meaning, are they weighted more towards online? Are they cross-channel fully? Is there anything you could share there?
Yeah, so we don't have physical branches, so to speak. So everything we're doing is from a digital presence. Mobile is, by number of hits, it is by far and large the vast majority of our traffic coming in. I think next in from that is going to be our .com channels. Now, what gets interesting, though, is that if you talk to our demographic kind of holistically, it's just like, oh, it's all mobile, and that's everything, right? But that's not paying attention to sub-parts and sub-pieces of our demographics where we've got, internally called low-tech, no-tech individuals where we're looking at, I want to do this thing the way I've always done it. I've got an established pattern for it. And you know what I do? When I talk to my bank and I talk to my insurance company, I call them and talk to them on the phone, right? So in those cases, we've got a small group of folks that are very dedicated to a particular channel, and that's what they want to do, and that's how they want to work. But mobile is by and far the largest.
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot. All right, can you all join me in thanking Dereck for a great session?